describing. The telephone game assumes a single line of transmission, right? You whisper into one person's ear. There are rules. You have to say it once. You can't say it very loudly. Whereas if you look at the history of the transmission, the copies and the dissemination of something like the New Testament text, it's spread out all around. And we even have, multiple translations that we can use as kind of comparative analysis other than the Greek. And so it's not one line of transmission as much as it's multiple lines of transmission spread over a long period of time with scribes in different locations writing to different audiences who the audiences themselves are at different locations. So there are ways to vet this process via what Dr. Wallace just described in the methodologies of textual criticism that really cut out the telephone game assumption. And really, when you talk to people who use the telephone game analogy, often what they have in mind is not necessarily transmission in a text being disseminated throughout the ancient world, but translation. They kind of assume that the Greek is being translated into Latin, and then the Greek copies are destroyed, and then the Latin is being translated into German, and then the Latin copies are destroyed, and the German's translated into Old French, into Old English, and eventually we get our modern English translation. And so you have this long span of time of translations of translations of translations. And sometimes when people accuse me of having a translation of a translation of a translation, I pull, my Nessie-Lalande text out of my backpack and say, well, I've translated this multiple times over and over and over, but I don't think that's what you mean, right? What they mean is something that is actually not representative of how we go from ancient papyrus to modern day print and how we go from the Hebrew and Greek directly into modern English translations. So while you can understand someone's ignorance in using an analogy like the telephone game, it really is that. It's an ignorance of both the translation process of the New Testament and the Old Testament likewise, and how we go from ancient papyrus and parchment into modern day print for any ancient document.
That was great.